Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we're back to another live stream of video game news with some Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Masters. Also, I've got to figure out a better way to say that, certainly if that's how I'm going to start calling this. Today is Wednesday, February 9th. I did do the transfer and install of Yu-Gi-Oh! On my Android cell phone in the Americas. So that's something that's going to happen. Where I can now play it on my phone or play it on PC, so we can get the daily quest done a little bit better. They're still trying to address the rank reward system here. Clearly they're trying to I think they're going to try and make good on this and reward people the rewards they would have gotten if they went from platinum down to gold versus other people. But yeah, we can see there's kind of consistent issues without actually reading them. And definitely I'm still seeing some consistent issues. The 1,000 reward for 10 million downloads was 1,000 gems once. The spectate is every day. So we're going to just start these streams from that perspective. I reached gold, so now I have the gold icon frame, which I assume last one that you could get would be platinum. And ironically here, without really spending a lot of money, I think no, I haven't spent any money on this game. I don't even know why I said it like that. I may make it to platinum this month, and very possibly only this month. The survey, I feel like, was missing, and then it seems, unless the survey has changed, this might be a different survey. January 19th to February 27th. It is possible this is a different survey to do. So I'll just do that off screen. For the accountability section, I've been playing Fallout 3, but also I've been increasingly just having pain in my neck. So I'm now wearing this like neck pillow. Yeah, I wore it to actually sleep in last night, and I'm just kind of wearing it very tightly around my neck the whole time. As for Fallout 3, I'm moving through the main story, and boy is all the story really only in that main quest line. Plus, all the companions are kind of only in the main quest line, because there's only 3 companions really in the game that I think you could probably get. There's probably 5 in the entire game. There's a point where you go through a side quest that feels like it would be a romance option, but there are no romance options in Fallout 3. So that's kind of wasteful. Because I played almost all of the game prematurely before doing the main story, which honestly isn't that weird, because if you'd played Fallout 3 without the DLC, you would have probably died at the end of the game and not been able to continue playing it. So they designed it originally for players to play it exactly like I've played it, being very obsessive and just easily distracted. And yet, it's not really balanced that way. So when I got to a main storyline area, I'm running into like fairly groups of 2 or 3 super mutant overlords, 2 super mutant overlords and a super mutant master, potentially, and they're just such bullet sponges, and they're actually able to hurt me, which is kind of shocking. That anything should be able to hurt me. I should be so overpowered. And yeah, I guess maybe the game is trying to make a slight argument around potentially building a I don't even know what it's trying to do. I lost my train of thought there. Let's just hop into a game. I did look up some of the top meta decks, so I do have a meta deck and enough dust probably to build that meta deck to take me further into gold and platinum, potentially even platinum rank. But at the moment, it really is just a matter of if you play this game enough and you can get even the occasional random win, you will make it to platinum. You probably won't do any good at platinum when you can go up and down rank at that point. But as a free-to-player, it's shocking that I've made it even to gold just playing this structured deck. From the suggestions I've seen, there are definitely some staple cards like Max C. We've seen Max C played quite a bit. Apparently that's a card that's banned in the Western version of Yu-Gi-Oh! And not banned in the Eastern version of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel or the Eastern version of Yu-Gi-Oh! So I kind of wonder if with Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel there might be an argument that they're going to try and eliminate some of the hindrances and some of the Western control of Yu-Gi-Oh! As a card game, which is somewhat believable. That maybe the Japanese Konami just wants to take back world control. And that might even set a precedence that at some point we'll get a Pokemon trading card game that keeps the rules firmly under the Pokemon Company's control and takes it out from being influenced in any way by Magic the Gathering's company, Wizards of the Coast. Which, not to get too deep into it, there is Wizards of the Coast stupidly has a patent on trading card games in the United States, and so there's no real way to have a trading card game in the United States without at least paying a license to Wizards of the Coast, and often having to do a lot more business with them. Which is just insane. So I could try and build the deck now, but what I think I'll have to do is we're going to have to go through the news because I want to get more free time. I have all these shelves that I need to build, and basically every day I'm going to stream is the right time for me to work on building these shelves, and so I'm trying to stagger it to not overexhaust myself or hurt myself building them. So for potentially the next 3 weeks or more, I'm going to just try and rush a little bit more than I normally try to rush, which is all the time anyways. Let's see. Yeah, doing that. Doesn't help much. Yeah, as far as the other accountability section stuff, since I've just been playing Fallout 3, and there's nothing interesting to say about Fallout 3, not really, anyways. We should just move on with the video game news. For some reason, today is Pie Day, or Pizza Day. Not Pie Day, Pizza Day. And I don't get it one bit. 2/9 doesn't, or February the 9th does not strike me as being something that would be, a day to involve pizza. So color me confused on that one, but several pizza places are doing slight sales. Let's do this. A character I don't know, Matt Koval, who is a YouTube liaison, has decided to leave YouTube, and I think in general you just have to take it on its face and kind of assume that he's one of many people that seem to be leaving YouTube, either as and it's your own personal opinion whether that's because of it being a sinking ship or whether it's because of just general turnover for the new year. He has a Twitter of at YouTube liaison, which makes an interesting point that he almost certainly will need to hand over that Twitter address to some other employee of YouTube. He's leaving, it seems, both YouTube and Google, and I assume Alphabet also. More video game related news is Bandai has done another wall of text saying basically the Dark Souls servers that were at risk of being hacked, or that put your computer at risk of being hacked with remote code executions, they are going to be down until after Elden Ring has been released, which seems like a very convenient decision for them to make, to push all the people who want to play any kind of Dark Souls like game online having to buy the new game and play the new game. It is a complicated enough issue though that I wouldn't be surprised if the Dark Souls fanboys out there don't revolt as much as they potentially should. Like, arguably there is a way to phrase a review that would probably be accused of being a review bomb review, to if you negatively reviewed Elden Ring, to say this company doesn't support its online servers, don't buy this game. Because it definitely is a legitimate concern that Elden Ring may just be the next game to be the only one to get any love or any attention, which that has been. There really isn't a great way to review companies in particular, and that would be a potential improvement on Steam if you could have reviews for the company show up as part of above reviews for the specific game, and not just for video games. That'd probably be very helpful for a lot of people, because yeah, even though we're playing a Konami game right now, I am being very cautious and trepidatious about whether or not this game will continuously get updates or whether it will just become a cash grab. Sifu apparently is very well liked. 80% of critics recommend. The overall open critic rating is strong. It is pretty unfair for me to point out open critic reviews of big games when there are so many small games that don't get that same coverage. But yeah, I do have a slight concern if I was ever going to try and play Sifu that it might be kind of a brutally difficult beat 'em up game of a sorts. For some reason, I have a bunch of kind of old Video Games Chronicles articles here. Xbox is very unlikely to be able to buy a big Japanese studio, claims analyst. But Catan Games Sirkan Toto believes Sony is considering making a move in Japan soon. In a lot of ways, this almost certainly is a Japanese analyst making that statement. But I don't think they're wrong either. I think the Japanese companies would be fairly resistant. This is really annoying to be at 100 and still get these pop-ups for no reason. I definitely question, though, what Sony of Japan would really even be allowed to acquire, because Sony of Japan is just not in charge anymore. Sony of California is. And so, unless the parent company of Sony decides to acquire some other video game company outside of Sony Interactive Entertainment, which is what Sony of California is called now, I just don't see Jim Ryan, I believe is his name, caring about acquiring a Japanese company or successfully acquiring a Japanese company too, or an Asian company. I mean, although in all fairness, you could probably acquire a Chinese company or a Korean company fairly easily. Microsoft or Sony could probably do that. And that might be the better battlefield to go down there, is to start acquiring young startup companies out of South Korea instead of trying to go for the heart of more established Asian companies in Japan or startup companies in China. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says Jade Raymond Studio is making a persistent, scalable online game for the PS5 and PC. Haven will reportedly collaborate with the PS5 lead systems architect Mark Cerny on its debut game. It is a little weird, this picture. Like, Like, I kind of need to look up Jade Raymond to see if she was an actress. She definitely looks good enough to have been an actress. But this just does not scream, I'm a professional businesswoman. This screams, this is my professional headshot slash body shot for movie role considerations. This brown, like, leather jacket looks fairly high fashion. Her hair is a little too good for somebody, for a CEO. There is a certain stereotype that CEOs tend to look like, as typically being older men, and then any women actually allowed to be in charge often have to, I guess you might use the phrase, tone change or appearance change to fit in with the boys, and that's why you often have the Hillary Clinton style pantsuit stereotype. And it's not right, but it is the way things have been done so far. And yeah, I would definitely want to see her standing upright, facing the camera, in some kind of professional looking attire, not adventure looking high fashion attire. Let's go ahead and draw a card. No. I don't want to activate him because I think that might have banished him, and I kind of need him back in my inventory. Of course, that may also really just be a case of Video Games Chronicle picking the wrong picture, because if we look at her Wikipedia picture, at least this is the right angle for a picture of her. Let's see, I'm looking at the career. Yeah, they chose this picture and they cropped it. And just sitting down does not send the right message. Bending over like this doesn't send the right message. Let's see. She worked at Ubisoft before. Yeah. She doesn't seem like she ever was an actress. Which, it's weird. A little too good looking to be a producer of video games. She apparently worked on The Sims Online, the first couple of Assassin's Creed games, Far Cry 4, and then Star Wars Battlefront. I believe Jade Raymond is the one that is one of the 2 or 3 female people that are major names in the video game world that keep getting the rug pulled out from under them and getting their projects canceled. And now that she owns her own company, maybe that opens some chance of her actually releasing a product recently. She was on the Stadia team before this. Amy Hennig, I believe, is another one. And in fairness, Amy Hennig definitely looks more like a game developer, producer. It's not as good looking, not as well made up, cheaper looking clothes. says that she's on the board of this directors for WIFT, Women in Film Television International. Which I guess that's supposed to be an I, not a T there. Which definitely puts my head back into the thought that maybe she at some point thought she would have been an actor. She was on G4. I don't even remember her. The Electric Playground. Like, if anything, that shows a great example of people working as video game critics, although I'm not sure you were really even criticizing games on the Electric Playground. I think maybe that was more of a game show. We should just click on that link and find out. But then moving over to working in the video game things. Electric Playground was a daily news television show, and it's now called EP Daily, and has like 25 seasons. Seems to still be happening. They have a YouTube channel, but they basically were canceled in 2014. And certainly that's not anything I followed, so I didn't know about it. Yeah. And you certainly could claim sexism in me saying that Jade Ramon looks too well dressed and too good looking and kind of just out of the realm of what the professional average of a game producer looks like. If we were to flip it the opposite direction, though, I don't think there are particularly any good looking male game producers out there. Like, I'm really trying to think, like the BioShock creator, he's maybe the best looking guy I can think of off the top of my head, and he still looks like a scrawny, kind of nerdy character. But yeah. All that golfing and business lunches tends not to have people looking good. And that's not just in the game industry. If you think about all the CEOs everywhere, Bill Gates totally looks like a nerd. Steve Bannon, the Apple guy that actually did all the programming for Apple, is hugely overweight and not good looking. Yeah, it is pretty typical for all genders in the upper corporate area to not look that good, despite all your money. People usually don't have that much time to work out at gyms or shop for clothes. Unless you're like working in a modeling agency or working as a hairstylist or something where appearance is a big factor. Connection failed. That was weird. I'm not having any network trouble though. Like, that certainly would irritate me if all of a sudden we start having internet trouble. I haven't seen any of that happen. I mean, I'm glad to to not have that trouble, but I'm not particularly happy that I had nearly a week and a half to 2 weeks of network trouble in the past. Moving on back to video game news, GTA's remastered trilogy has significantly exceeded expectations with up to 10 million sales, which that is a shame. If anything, the gaming world and people with nostalgia for the GTA series have told Rockstar that they can get away with making a garbage port and people still buy it. Take-Two says it's exceedingly confident about the quality of the upcoming GTA games following the trilogy issues. Of course, exceeded expectations really doesn't mean anything much, because expectations could have been very low, but 10 million is the same number of sales as what the free-to-play Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel got for downloads. So 10 million gets you in the top 10 selling games on Steam, if you specifically have 10 million on Steam. Although in fairness, the GTA trilogy was spread out through 3 or 4 different consoles, so maybe you should divide by 3 at that and really say it sold closer to 3.3 million. That would be a little unfair way to do math too, but be something to consider. Alright, well, activate this, put this here. One of the complaints I definitely heard about as far as Duel Links is that there was a lot more interaction and clicking going on in many instances in Duel Links, and so it seems like they've potentially tried to speed up the process a little bit. Although there's still a lot of times where a lot of clicking happens, and I really would like to see a collectible card game allow for a level of scripting and programming to happen. For instance, my Exodia deck, like if it was programmable, I could play the Exodia deck that I built a lot easier while streaming, but since it isn't programmable, it's just not really worth it to sit there and click yes, discard a card, yes, draw a card, yes, discard a card, yes, draw a card. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says early Steam Deck previews praise performance but question the comfort. It seems like it's a lot bigger than people thought. One of the things I've seen is there's a thickness because you have this bump in the back and then you have the bump in the forward with the thumbsticks, which the last Tech Tip said was pretty good, but then there's just some awkwardness in the positioning of these buttons too. I almost wish that they had created some system where you could collapse the thumbsticks or remove the thumbsticks. Actually, removing the thumbsticks wouldn't have been a terrible idea to make it a little bit flatter and fit in a smaller case. It would also not be a terrible idea to make it so that you could clean up the insides of the thumbsticks. And I'm just getting fairly lucky here. Keep on playing. Not everything is perfect, and there is definitely an argument for waiting to see if Valve maintains its attention on the Steam Deck and comes out with a second version in a year or two. And there may very well just be some games that don't really run as well as you might have wanted them to run. Like, personally, I think I would prefer the thumbsticks in a more traditional Xbox or PlayStation type layout, and then the touchpads to be removed. Like I said, the speakers sound really good, but the haptic feedback is cheap, and that they're maybe hoping to fix that in software. I wouldn't be surprised if Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel has network trouble, and that's how I've made it up to gold, is that I've just had a lot of like people disconnecting. I don't feel like that's been the sole reason, but there have been enough disconnects certainly to get me far enough around here. $400 still feels like a lot of money. One of the things, this really has very little to do with the Raspberry Pi, but I mean with the Steam Deck, but the Raspberry Pi has got a new beta network installer, which would potentially allow you to install Raspberry Pi OS without owning a computer at all, which they just announced yesterday, I believe, and that'll be interesting to see if that is capable to use something like TFTP boot, trivial FTP, to install other operating systems, or just have Raspberry Pis on a local area network and have these setups already. Which one is he going to target? I don't know which, so I'm going to cancel this and not activate it. Because yeah, for kiosk type design, if you could put a Raspberry Pi behind a TV and just plug it into the network, and then some server somewhere downloads the custom build of Linux you have, that would be very nice. I keep hitting my microphone, sorry. But at the current way it's being explained and described, it is probably only really just for like science labs for kids, so that you don't have to have all the kids bringing up SD cards to the teacher, so the teacher can then spend an evening installing the same operating system on 30 copies of SD cards. Particularly since kids do have that chance of corrupting the data pretty easily. So how that relates in my mind to the Steam Deck is, can we really get to a point where the Steam Deck is its own standalone device and you really don't need a computer to play enough games that it makes sense? Because currently, even though we've heard good news, I have a hard time believing too many parents would be willing to give a Steam Deck to their kids that probably already have a Nintendo Switch or could get one very cheaply, to play a collection of games that probably aren't age appropriate, because it's not like there's a ton of kids games on Steam. And we haven't heard any real talk of any special family controls or monitoring for the Steam Deck. So I feel like there's a lot of software and hardware issues that need to be potentially addressed. I found a new gadget. Not one I think I would actually buy, since I've already installed a video doorbell, which was not particularly great, and maybe there's a argument around upgrading it a little bit, but they have this new deadbolt replacement that has a video doorbell built into it. This has nothing to do with video games, but it's an interesting idea, certainly. There's a front faceplate on it where you can type in a PIN code or use a fingerprint to unlock the deadbolt, and just below that is a button that rings a doorbell and launches to an app and such, kind of like the Ring without having to be in the Ring infrastructure. There is some weirdness there, though. Certainly, I imagine a significant portion of people would not see the button on the deadbolt as a doorbell and would be afraid to push it, or just wouldn't push it. Questionable how many people you really want ringing your doorbell, but theoretically you want everybody that's actually trying to get your attention to ring the doorbell. You just don't want as many solicitors as you might get. But yeah, compared to the better known like August smart lock deadbolt things, it does a few more things. And so that might be the direction. Although right now, it's kind of the worst time to think about any kind of home automation, home integration systems, because the Matter infrastructure that's supposed to basically get rid of Z-Wave and Zigbee lack of compatibility is coming out either this year or in a couple years, and it's supposed to be a much better system and a much better, hopefully longer lasting integration. There's been a lot of first generation home integration stuff that was either not secure or just not supported and abandoned amongst even the big name players in home automation. The deadbolt lock, by the way, tracks like Bluetooth people's phones and will automatically unlock and tells you if the door is open, was left open, or if your kids come home. It certainly would work fairly well for a large family that is just always in and out, to know when people came home and when they didn't. But also there's some improvement because it doesn't have like motion detection on it, which is the number one flaw at the moment, and it doesn't have really good infrared LEDs to illuminate for night vision, so the night images are not particularly good. It doesn't have face detection either because it doesn't have motion detection, which that would be a feature I think some people would like if they could just walk up to their house and it detect a face and unlock it, particularly for like kids. Although I don't know how good face detection is between kids anyways. Probably a pretty dark secret that nobody admits, that face detection is not that good, and it unlocks a lot of times on similar faces. Back to video game news, since I'm just rambling at this point talking about gadgets. Intellivision's new CEO warns that the Amico price could rise as Tommy Tallarico steps down. He will remain as president of the company while Phil Adam takes over as CEO. This Amico console definitely never look like anything of interest to me, and it seems like it's just getting worse news. Nvidia's deal to acquire the iPhone and Switch chipmaker ARM has collapsed. Regulators didn't approve of the transaction, which is probably a good thing, but it may very well hurt ARM, whereas NVIDIA may suffer a little bit because of chip shortages as far as video cards and crypto mining. I think NVIDIA secretly has been making tons of money on the video card shortages and crypto mining, so I think they'll be fine. Personally, I'd like to see ARM kind of be acquired or go bankrupt so that the whole idea of having to license the ARM technology could be gotten rid of. So more people would either adopt ARM chips. But to say iPhone chip maker and Switch chip maker ARM is kind of disingenuous, because ARM doesn't actually manufacture any chips. They only license it to third-party factories like TSMC to make to take that patented technology and make their own chips from it. And B, iPhone is kind of going its own route anyways. So, like, the M1 chip is not, I think, an ARM chip, unless I'm completely mistaken. And I wouldn't be surprised if Nintendo tried some weird chip that wasn't an ARM chip. Okay. There is a slight push to make Windows work on ARM, and they've made a version of Windows that runs on ARM, but I don't know if there's a real push as far as laptop manufacturers or Chromebook manufacturers trying to make ARM computers. I just don't think that's going to pick up. So we need we probably should have just set that. I'm gonna lose here. Oh well. Video Games Chronicle says Platinum says it wants to talk to Xbox about Scalebound. Quote, Phil, let's do it. This new CEO of Platinum Games, he certainly has said a lot in these interviews, but apparently he was a founding member of Platinum Games, so while he may be making some waves with his interviews, I think he either has stayed silent on a lot of ideas he wanted to implement up until this point, or I wouldn't be surprised if he does very little different compared to the previous Scalebound CEO, Platinum Games CEO. As for the game Scalebound, I don't know specifically what is in Scalebound that needs to come into existence. Make a different game, don't call it Scalebound. Make it with a dragon and a magic person has the ability to control a dragon, fine. Make it a sword hack and slash, fine. Get rid of the modern clothing and the Beats by Dre headphones, because that's a stupid idea. All that was ever shown about Scalebound was very vague general concepts, and now they have the taint of failure on them. And there is a potential thought here that maybe Microsoft has changed its tactics and its attention. There was a point when Microsoft said it wanted to partner with Japanese companies, but with all these new acquisitions that they're trying to do, maybe the new move is we're not going to work with companies, we're going to acquire companies. And then maybe down the line, then Microsoft becomes the dictator and demands the companies they own to make the games they want. There is definitely security around that idea, certainly, to own the company and be able to force the company to work on what you want them to work on, versus having to do the whole publisher developer negotiation nonsense. This Ash Blossom is another staple card that I have. It should be in my deck, but I haven't done it yet. I haven't built a deck yet. Bandai Namco is making its own $130 million IP metaverse. The publisher wants to create virtual spaces to connect with fans, which I don't know if you have to call that a metaverse or whether you just call that a website or a lobby. Bandai Namco has also changed its logo again. Apparently they pulled the employees and decided to change it to this more pink outline. Well, no. It's the other way around. The pink outline got replaced with the red outline, which that certainly looks better to my eye. The red. Pink is this magenta is a harsh color, and I've never seen a brand use magenta like successfully, and particularly in large swaths. Also, I would say this logo is blurrier, and the black is not as true black, so I don't know if this is just two different pictures side by side, but there is a level lacking detail in the text. Otherwise, it's just exactly the same. I wouldn't be surprised if they were made fun of the magenta, if people thought it was a little effeminate or too effeminate for Bandai Namco, which isn't really known for making particularly effeminate games, or exclusively effeminate games, at least. Bandai Namco mostly making like anime RPG games. I wouldn't be surprised if some of the Japanese felt it was more of a gay color or pandering to LGBTQ plus organizations. Although almost certainly it had nothing to do with any of that. It was probably just some dumb idea somebody in power implemented without doing any research or market research. It's definitely a case of showing how Bandai Namco does not run their business in the way I would think would be correctly, because you would have tested a color, you would have had a lot of people fill out surveys and see what they think about it, you would have done internal surveys, and frankly at this point, whenever you're going to change the color of anything, you need to just slowly shift the logo from the old color to the new color. I still heavily suspect that Steam is slowly shifting away from a blue background on its website to a black background. Moving on, there's a 13-minute Destiny 2 video previews of the Witch Queen expansion. Check that out if you're interested. A Battlefield 2042 refund petition is rapidly gaining support. It's been signed by almost 30,000 players. So, seems like people are not happy with Battlefield 42. go ahead and special summon that. And then summon that. Let's see if this works. Is he gonna activate some kind of trap? Seems like it. A new Ghost of Tsushima's Director's Cut update has added a Horizon-themed armor, which, yeah, it seems to particularly visually stand out in a bad way. Here we have a trailer for Horizon Forbidden West challenges. Which, I guess I didn't even really know there were challenges. Let's see. Video Games Chronicle says Phil Spencer wants to make Starfield the most played Bethesda game ever. It kind of has to be. And it's both in an awkward position where it has to be a fairly realistic experience of a game, because it can't be out there and wild like Fallout, which is kind of diesel punk, and it can't be fantasy like Elder Scrolls. And so you look at a screenshot like this and it does look like it's trying to be more just in the real world, set in the future, so in space. I assume each of these very nice looking books implies that there will be books you can actually read, which you actually can't do in Fallout 3, which is kind of shocking when you consider like Skyrim. This video here certainly is a lot of talk and not a lot of footage. But see, you could certainly find that Starfield has either no aliens in it at all, or you run into aliens and then all of a sudden they are like laughably comedic in their appearance. So that's going to be a dangerous balance. Like, and you're in this weird catch-22 as a gamer, or at least I am, in that I want to see the parent company ZeniMax shuttered and fired. I don't think ZeniMax as a parent company needs to exist for Bethesda to continue to exist. But Bethesda left on its own devices may take another decade or two to make another game after Starfield, or that Starfield could easily just be another nightmare Bethesda game with systems that are half finished and there really isn't a story there or a game there worth the amount of hundreds of hours you have to put into playing. Bethesda games in particular would significantly benefit from being abridged and having remastered abridged versions of their games. I do want to see Starfield succeed, but I want to see it succeed for actually being a good game. And that's not something I'm certain it will be. Yeah. Fugiki is another card that early on you probably want to craft. Let's see, a new PS5 beta test will introduce voice commands on Wednesday. which I assume that these will be voice commands inside the home screen. I wouldn't suspect that there's going to be much of a way to have voice commands inside of a game. You could probably have some voice commands that say, like, take a screenshot, and if there's noise reduction technology in the microphone on the controller, maybe it could pick that up even with game audio playing. But that would be about it. Like, I seriously doubt you're all of a sudden going to want to, like, have a headset on and talk to the game instead of either chatting to your friends via a headset or talk to the game instead of just bringing up a keyboard and typing. Apparently Sony is also going to change how parties work on the PS5 and PS4. If that interests you, check it out. Call of Duty Warzone, Vanguard and Warzone Pacific Season 2 has been detailed. Check that article if you're interested. I'm not. Pokemon Legends has gotten a patch to make it easier to catch Cheerium. Which Pokemon Legends, I believe, is the mobile phone game? No, Pokemon Legends Arceus is the newest game, and it's getting a patch, which that's almost hopeful to see Nintendo actually, or a Pokemon company, put out a patch. Video Game Donkey is not really a source for any real news, but he did make an interesting point to say that pretty much up until this point, all the previous Pokemon games have just been the same game, just getting slight tweaks. That's not really true. The stories have been different between the different generations, but the gameplay mechanics have stayed pretty much the same. The graphics have stayed pretty much the same. The general storyline has been pretty much the same. And the major changes of Pokemon Legends Arceus definitely establishes a new different experience. This guy's trying to destroy my actions as much as possible. Indie developers say they're worried Xbox's Activision deal could hurt them. Concerns suggest the growth of Game Pass will make other indie titles suffer. They're using the boyfriend dungeon image here, which, yeah, they definitely overhyped Boyfriend Dungeon as a game, and I think it's come out of early access, and it's still really, I don't think has justified the amount of time it's been talked about. At a certain level, they're right, though. As big businesses get bigger, it will inevitably, in some way, hurt small indie businesses. Like, if the United States in particular would adopt the idea of not allowing mega corporations to exist and these triopolies to exist, or duopolies to exist, it would probably be better. Like, I honestly think the idea of just embracing small business only makes a lot of sense, and having like maximum caps on valuations or a limiting or removal of being able to be a public company and owned, being funded and owned by shareholders. If you eliminated the idea of shares and shareholders, all businesses would have to stay within, at most, medium-sized businesses, because no one individual or small group of people could possibly fund the acquisition of $69 million or even $1 million. Acquisitions would be kind of hard. And I don't know if there's ever been an actual historical point you could point to of a company being allowed to become big where it really benefited society. It's always this nebulous thing. Like the whole Amazon.com argument, as they're raising the Amazon Prime price by $2 a month for seemingly no good reason, is kind of an example there that Amazon.com has been allowed to be the de facto biggest business on the internet, and it has hurt millions probably of small independent websites trying to sell things. And sure, they've optimized same-day delivery and that helps the consumer, but they did it on the backs of employees. And we are definitely at a point now where a lot of people feel like they don't have money to buy the things they want or need. So yeah, I don't think in balance, if you were to run the numbers, you can guarantee that Amazon.com being allowed to be this big business helped. Walmart, almost universally people say, was a bad outcome. Being allowed to get rid of smaller mom and pop general grocery stores and supermarkets. There is a slight difference, though, I will admit, as far as indie game developers. Because all they're really making an argument for here, I think, without actually reading the article, is that there would be more competition. And it's almost talking out of both sides of your mouth for indie developers to go, Microsoft acquiring a company and making more games is going to hurt us because there's going to be more competition. And generally, the goal should not be to protect small business. The goal should be to protect individuals, consumers. They are the real victims of capitalism. Moving on, a planned Switch Online NES Super NES maintenance could suggest that some Nintendo Direct news. I believe Nintendo Direct is either going to happen in a few hours or minutes, or is already happening. Yeah, it certainly would make sense, though, for them to release a few more games. The Days Gone director wanted to make an Uncharted game about young Sully, following the cancellation of Days Gone. I don't know why we're still talking about... Wow, that was a massive amount of damage he just did there. Like, the Days Gone director clearly is off the rails, and people are giving him far too much of a microphone at this point. I mean, he's not saying anything incredibly controversial, but he is definitely trying to turn himself into the next hype man, to make a whole bunch of promises, or say that he had a whole bunch of promises and it was Sony's fault for everything getting canceled and everything failing. He's basically burning bridges with Sony, and I assume bridges have already been burned, and he comes off as being a little bitter and a little naive. Like, I'm sure pretty much every video game company would love to make a Super Mario game too. But coming out and saying, hey, I had this idea for a Super Mario game, is not relevant news or something that you even should say out loud. Okay. Yeah, I think this will work. We do this. We don't really need to cycle that. We do this. And we can chain this if we want to. Although we shouldn't change it because this might trigger that. Summon this by sacrificing that. See if this works. Thought this would let me destroy that, but it didn't. The PUBG maker Crafton has announced plans to build an NFT metaverse platform. I'm sure nobody's interested in that. We already talked about this. The Dark Souls publisher confirms that game servers will be offline until after the Elden Ring's release. It's currently unclear which of the many issues will be tackled. Yeah, read the article if you're more interested in that. Horizon Forbidden West has been shown running on a base PS4 for the first time. The short gameplay clip published ahead of next week's release. Which I imagine it's not going to look particularly great or so awful that people would like revolt. I don't think there's too many people out there that are going to complain that a brand new game doesn't look as good on the PS4 as it does on the PS5 Pro. A smaller stealth-focused Assassin's Creed game starring Basim is reportedly coming by 2023. It's claimed the project was originally planned as a Valhalla expansion. That's an interesting potential yet another new direction for the Assassin's Creed series if they really tried to bring it back into being less open world like the first game and more stealth focused like the first game. Although there's a lot of different ways you can make a stealth focused game and still it not feel like the original Assassin's Creed game. It would be kind of funny if it went fairly full circle and we're back to playing something like Assassin's Creed 1 where there was just 3 or 4 cities and every mission in the city was mostly stealth focused. It wasn't until you got at least halfway through the Assassin's Creed 2 games that they started being safe enough that you could just attack it and fight everybody. Let's see. In this. And then Microsoft claims it will continue to release Activision Blizzard games for PlayStation beyond, quote, beyond existing agreements. Which, yeah, okay. Those claims are to be expected. Here we have a game called One Against the Wind on Steam, which looks like nothing. Here we have West Journey War, which looks like a Chinese mobile phone game. Yep. Here we have a hidden object game, Spirits Chronicles. So we can say no to that also. Go ahead and end. Here we have a game called Sinister, which looks very simplistic in its graphics, so I'm uninterested in that. They're comparing it to Hellblade, $1.99. Like, what in the world makes this look anything like Hellblade? The fact that it has a tag of survival horror, that'd be the only thing I could guess. Here we have Rise of Enigmas, which, if this is some kind of puzzle game, is visually not polished enough. Even if you were just like decrypting enigmas. general enigmas, not just the enigma code that the Germans had. So we have to say no to that also. Well, we had a couple good wins. Probably wouldn't be a terrible idea to come back and just make sure we don't have any new missions. Done with that one. Done with that one. Like, these daily quests at most seem to have you duel 2 or 3 times or win once in ranked. Which that's a much easier requirement. Yeah, and so unless this resets, I don't know if we're really going to do much more. We'll slowly just move these numbers up, but it's going to be quite a long time to get your duelist level to 50 or do 1,000 ranked duels. Once all of those unlimited missions are done, I guess there's just nothing left at that point. Here we have a game called Orbeez Chronicle, which seems to be some kind of word game. So it's an anagram game? There might be something to that idea. To take something like Darkest Dungeon and then have anagrams in the middle. It kind of feels like a mobile game. This could be very boring, certainly also, and not really go anywhere. It's English, it allegedly has full audio. I don't know how many enemies or levels you'd actually go through with this. And that would certainly affect things. Seems like you do have some RPG elements that pop up. But I will put that on the fault list. It at least seems like it's trying to do something different. Right. Go ahead and do this. Set this. And special summon this by sacrificing this. And leave everything else where it is. Here we have a game called Nuke After the Blast, which just looks like a low effort survival, low polygon survival asset flip game. Here we have Karagon Prologue, which I'm gonna just assume is a prologue game. Doesn't look terrible. Apparently it's an open world survival crafting game, first person shooter. There is certainly something to this idea of doing a lot more shooting of not just humans while in a survival environment. Because compare that to something like PUBG or something, it seems like it's always just humans against humans. We would have to figure out where the level of survival actually is. Tribute that from the graveyard to put it back in the hand. Alright. Let's see if this just is mirror force. But Kerrigan, or Kerrigan, it's kind of a funny name. Oops, we're in trouble now. Well, I'm not sure what I can do here. I can kill this guy. Or we can wait for next turn. Let's wait for next turn. I'm gonna assume, yeah, this is just a prologue for a game that's not out, so I'm gonna ignore it for now and wait for the real game to come out. Next we have First Class Escape 2 Head in the Clouds, which looks to me like it's probably a escape room. Do I want to play 3D escape rooms? I don't know. See if there's a First Class Escape 1. See what the reviews on that are. Mixed. And this came out September of 2021. Okay, well then that makes it very easily to ignore the sequel if the first one's bad. Here we have Barn Finders VR The Pilot, which I assume this is you're finding junk on the inside of barns. Treasure hunting, basically. I would heavily suspect that the odds of finding any treasure inside a barn is much lower than finding treasure inside of a house. Or even a farmhouse. They're getting buffed up quite a bit. So can we survive this? Yeah, I think we can say no to Barn Finders VR. Panicked and Shrouded by Hot Vampires looks like a poorly animated visual novel. Free. English only, so I guess check it out if you're interested. Alright, let's do this. Special summon that by activating that. Put that face up. Activate this. Protect it. What did I just do? Other than kill myself. The opponent cannot activate any spell or trap card or use their effect until next standby phase. So that's not what would have stopped this effect. So what is influencing this? Yeah, this card negates all effects, so I'm doomed to lose anyways. Let's see, Gametsu. We already talked about Demon Slayer way too much. River City Girls Zero launches February 14th for the Switch and this spring for basically everything else. River City Girls Zero is the original River City Girls game, though, being kind of relabeled and re-released. Nacon has acquired the Edge of Eternity developer Midgar Studio. The console versions of Edge of Eternity are due out in February. Don't even know what Edge of Eternity is, but to be acquired. as your game is still coming out, pretty much either means you succeeded very well, which is probably not the case, or you failed pretty badly. Edge of Eternity here is a wishlisted JRPG game. It may not have anything to do with levels of success at all. It may very well have to do with the bosses simply not wanting to be the bosses. I didn't know I could be demoted to a lower rank. When that's new. Well, we may end up stuck at gold rank 5 at this rate. The Wolf Among Us 2, a Telltale series behind the scenes live stream, is set for today. Very possibly is happening or has just happened. Now remember, this is the this is going to be hosted by Jeff Keighley. Remember, this is the new Telltale games, not the old Telltale games, and it's very questionable if any of the people who worked on the original Wolf Among Us are going to work on this new game. I don't know if that really matters in any way, because the Wolf Among Us is based off the Fables comic book, and I don't know if the story told in Wolf Among Us 1 wasn't really just a direct beat for beat copy of what happens in the Fables comic book. If anything, all the delays and the collapse of the original Telltale company highlight the problem of trying to take a comic book to other media, is just how incredibly long it has taken. I believe that Why the Last Man live action TV series has already been canceled. I'm not sure for certain, but and certainly the Why the Last Man TV series came out like a decade and a half after the Why the Last Man comic book has happened, and I still have yet to finish reading Why the Last Man as a comic book series. I just never personally have any time where I want to sit down and read. I'm much more of a visual aspect person. I would much prefer to even find just an awful YouTuber doing Minecraft videos versus sitting down and reading. Although, with the crick in my neck, maybe reading would help, although it might also hurt. I do want to play The Wolf Among Us 2 though, so I don't want to be too down on it. I kind of hope it wraps up the story as much as possible, and we aren't going to see an attempt here to have 5 seasons like the Walking Dead Telltale game went. Honestly, at best, there were only 3, probably closer to 2.5 good stories of The Walking Dead that were told amongst 5 or 6 different Walking Dead Telltale games. So hopefully it just kind of wraps things up. Gametsu's has the Rune Factory 5 Bachelors and Bachelorettes trailers showing off like romance options. So they've split them up, in particular between the guys and the girls. Rune Factory is a JRPG game. Yeah, probably when I get some free time in a month or two, I need to reevaluate whether it really is worth blurring out these videos. But the core of it would be, is Rune Factory 5 a JRPG worth playing, or do you need to play the 4 previous games? Can you jump on the 5th one? Gamatsu says the Resident Evil 3 remake shipments and digital sales have topped 5 million. This was launched in April of 2020. I've also heard increasing talk from the people in charge that they're looking to potentially make even more changes to Resident Evil 4 in the Resident Evil 4 remake, and it is kind of debatable compared to Resident Evil 3 whether Resident Evil 4 is old looking enough to justify the remake. I mean, it certainly would benefit from being on just a newer engine as much as the previous games benefited by being on newer graphics and newer engines. But the serious tone that the Resident Evil series has adopted with its reboots and remakes is going to smack quite a bit into the Resident Evil 4 people know and love. We've already seen dialogue and elements changed in the Resident Evil 4 VR version of the game, so they are definitely testing the water, but I kind of question if Resident Evil 4 not only in storyline and tone will change, but in gameplay style would actually change, because there's like puzzles and action sequences in Resident Evil 4, whereas as a person who hasn't really played Resident Evil 1, 2, or 3, I kind of feel like those games were more just kind of linear, almost like dungeon crawling sections. I'm not sure that there were too many places where you got locked into a room and you had to fight a boss, or where you had to solve a bunch of puzzles. And yeah, it would kind of make sense for them to make a remake called Resident Evil 4 that didn't even take place in the same area and actually went back to STARS members and Raccoon City and just told a different tale that happened during the same time. And that would be very confusing, certainly, but it wouldn't be a terrible way to just kind of wash your hands of the events of Resident Evil 4. Or you could have a Resident Evil 4 remake take place in the same locations, but after Leon had already left. Although certain islands, I think, were blown up in that whole process. But yeah, by the time you get to Leon, there's just too many people, too many different characters. So introducing more characters becomes a problem. It just gets worse in Resident Evil 5. It just gets worse in Resident Evil 6. So if they came out and said that they specifically just wanted to continue the Jill Valentine and main characters that we saw in Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3, if we wanted to make them the core characters and focus more on them and move the story that way forward, I could see that being a good excuse to do something very different. There's also the excuse to just not do anything with Resident Evil 4 and just focus on making Village 2 or whatever the next Resident Evil game would be. It's funny, this picture probably must be fairly bad because this character kind of looks like they have fairly puffy cheeks or very round face, and I never heard of any complaint about that. So let's check what Resident Evil 3's reviews are as far as on Steam. Yeah, seems like people are mostly positive on it. Yeah, it would be really easy to say, this guy and this girl, we're going to focus on their stories and continue down that way. And we're going to focus on zombies, and we're not going to bring in the Ganados. And we're going to tell an alternate reality story. We're going to say this is an alternate universe. And just create the division point there. I think that, I mean, whatever you do is going to go down like a lead balloon anyway, so you might as well try something ambitious instead of playing it safe. Because the only safe thing to do would be to just very minimally remaster the visuals on Resident Evil 4 and sell it again. And I've done that so many times, I don't think they can get away with doing it again. Let's see. Komatsu has an article here. One Step from Eden has a follow-up game called Duelists from Eden, announced for PC. It's a deck-based fighting game with rollback netcode, which I'm not sure if you really need rollback netcode in a deck-based game, but I guess we'll see. There's a trailer here. We can see how this does kind of seem like it's a positional placement game in part based on decks actions and kind of a fighting game too. So yeah, that feels fairly off from what you would expect as far as a as far as a card game. Let's see. Can we fall down all the way outside of gold, or are we safe? I think we're safe to continue just dueling, even if we are just going to lose a lot. Here we have a game on Steam called Help Club, which is some kind of mental health metaverse, or at least it claims to be that. I definitely would not trust that one bit. It doesn't seem smart to have even two people with mental health, 18 plus or older or younger, getting together. Like, group therapy is more of a TV thing than a thing that I think really is useful. It's cheap therapy it would be what I would really categorize group therapy as. And certainly you would still need trusted professional psychotherapists amongst this, if this really was about mental health. A bunch of mental health apps in the same way. It's like on mobile phones that you really need to do your research and not trust this stuff. Otherwise, it may very well make you think you're getting help when you really aren't. So I'm definitely going to say no to Help Club. Model Builder here. It's an interesting thought. It's not particularly something I think I probably would want to do too much of, but if the price was right, I might be able to justify putting this on the wish list. Doing some model kit building. What's funny is this is all kinds of model kits, whereas I'd imagine certain model kit builders like to do props, and then certain like to do military planes, certain like to do ships, certain people like to do tanks and Gundam. I'm not sure how many people like to do all of them. This is a very Japanese thing, certainly, too. The Japanese are way more into model kit building than I think people in the West are. I have done one model kit build. No. I guess technically I may have done 2 or 3 in my life, and I've never come around from that thinking, boy, do I want to do more of that. Often I find model kits to be kind of frustrating because they are not perfect looking models, or it's impossible to put them together and make them look perfect. Some of what this is showing though is this is basically a 3D print and not really a model kit. It's 3D printed as one unit and then you're painting it, which is a part of model kit building if you want it to be, although many model kits already are pre-colored or painted. See, next we have a game called Within Scary, which is spelled S-K-E-R-R-Y. It looks to be just an acid flip horror game. That would be my guess. $4.99, bunch of languages. Say no to that. And we have Power to the People, which is a city sim game of no interest. So no to that. Here we have another hidden object game, this time from Big Fish Games. So no to that. The previous one was from Domini Games. There might be an interesting metagame here that I hadn't considered. If you play something that makes your opponent choose a card and they're not paying attention, it's easy enough for low-level players to just time out and automatically surrender at that point, because they were expecting they were expecting to not be prompted. Although at gold level and higher, I imagine most players are going to always play, and so it's probably not worth attempting that trick. Here we have a game called Crazy Cube Adventure, which looks like garbage. Here we have Purry Furry Adventure, which also doesn't look like anything of interest. You're chasing a cat, and then Endless Runner, which is a cute gimmick, but the visuals and the elements aren't there enough. And you would really have to have a great game to make me want to play an Endless Runner anyways. We have a game called Night Riot that looks bad. English and Russian. Funny Street Football. It looks like these kids are playing in their underwear, the way everything's animated. I assume it's supposed to be shorts, but yeah. Turn 3 loss. Clearly my deck is not there yet. Yeah, Funny Street Football is English and Russian, also obviously a no there. Dino Island Adventure doesn't look polished enough, so no to that. Colony Simulator looks like nothing. Trapped VR looks like nothing. Same old, same old. Just a whole lot of bad games. Unfortunately, we really still are in a position where there's enough hidden gems that come out that don't get talked about to still justify looking at every single game that comes out on Steam. It's not like it's a 1 in 1,000 chance that you'll find a game that I have forgotten about or haven't heard of. And then the odds shift drastically based on the day, the month, the year. But I really just don't have a way to curate the experience and do it in a fair way. Gamatsu says Izanagi Games issues new shares to Bilibili through third-party allotment, which that's a little too inside baseball for me to understand. The Octopath Traveler smartphone game Champions of the Continent is coming to the West in 2022. I think we had already heard that. Kowloon High School Chronicle for PS4 is coming to Europe on March 18th. I assume this is a visual novel. No, it's a JRPG. Is it already out in America, or is it not coming to America? Yeah, I remember this. I think it's already out in America because it was kind of this dungeon crawler that had this one character that looked weird. Had a weird little necklace. This character did. Really is just a dungeon crawler. Probably not much to it. Yeah, I have to just assume that it's already come out to America. May be wrong about that though. The Nintendo Direct was set for today, featuring 40 minutes of Switch games mainly due out in the first half of 2022. So, I may want to run my macro again at the end of this stream just to see what new news has happened. The Quintessential Quintuplets, the movie, 5 Memories of My Time with You, has been announced for PS4 and Switch, due out on June 2nd in Japan. I'm wondering if this is based off that anime where, like, there's a flash forward at the beginning of the anime that this guy is going to marry one of these quintuplets, but then it flashes back to him being like a tutor for them while they're in high school, and then it's this real question about which of the 5 quintuplets are the ones that are going to be the one that marries him. Although, if it is the anime I'm thinking of, there seemed to be only like one of them that really even liked the guy, and the rest of them were generally accepting of him, but not romantically interested in him. Here you have a very anime thing of giving 5 different quintuplets very different hairstyles, so you can keep them separate. Hair colors, hairstyles. It definitely feels like this is going to just be a dating sim romance game, which would definitely be in line with the anime I'm thinking of. Romance visual novels, what it is. Evil Dead the game has a pre-order trailer, according to Gamatsu. You have to watch that on YouTube, and it would be blurred out anyway, so let's not bother. The PS5, PS4 system betas roll out February 9th, including open parties, new UI enhancements, party chat options, and accessibility features. Read that article if you're interested. The Cruel King and the Great Hero has been delayed to March 11th in Europe and March 15th in North America. This is either the game that is a sequel to another game, or this is the game that has changed its name. Because there was one that was like the Blind Prince and the Monster or something like that. And it looked visually somewhat similar to this. Although, maybe this is just a sequel to that game. Or maybe it's just a similar looking game. But clearly it's having trouble. We haven't been seeing too much as far as delays in Japanese games lately. I think that's mostly because nothing has bothered to even announce anything, because they're just so incredibly far behind, and that's why we haven't been seeing that many announcements of delays even. Like, for comparison of other Japanese businesses, the Winterfest is a anime figure event that happens every year, but has been canceled for like 3 or 4 years in a row due to the pandemic, and they just now actually had an event. And I was looking at some of the figures and of the anime moe figures that were being displayed. They didn't look that good. So it's not even that there was a delay in the implementation of the conference or the festival presentation of these products, but there seems to have been a delay or a lack of quality around the products themselves. Moving on, back to video games. The King of Fighters 15 has a special animated short. I guess that is technically video game related. RPG Time: The Legend of Right launches March 15th according to Komatsu. I think this is that weird game where it kind of looks like you're playing a Game Boy game, but then you're also interacting with basically everything else you see on the screen there. Let me just hit play on this trailer and see. Yeah. It seems like it's almost like a Paper Mario attempt of a clone of a Paper Mario, but it's so animated, I really have to question how much of a game there really is going to be here, because it's so flashy. Any one of these could be a decent gimmick, but to see so many of these gimmicks is very questionable. Meanwhile, this guy's just taking a sweet time to win. The Famitsu review scores for issue 1732 are available, giving Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Extraction 32 out of 40 and Token Rambo Warriors 34 out of 40. Neo shipments and digital sales have topped 2.5 million, which is a funny little pixie characters to depict for the 5th anniversary. And the fact that it's taken 5 years to get to 2.5 million really just says that Neo, well, maybe it's the 5th anniversary of Neo 1, and the Neo 2's only been out for a couple years, but even if Neo 2's only been out for since April of 2021, Neo is still a niche enough game that it's not getting the level of sales compared to like even Resident Evil 3. A Nier Automata 5th anniversary live stream has been set for February 23rd. Some sort of information will be announced. I wouldn't be surprised though if the information is that they've got one more piece of content that they're going to release, and then that's going to be the end of the Nier Automata series, or that they aren't going to do anything more for the Nier Automata series, and the announcement that's going to be made is just a sales number announcement or something like that. Let's see, the game The Serpent Rogue launches April 26th for the PS4, Xbox Series, Switch, and PC. It's an alchemy themed action-adventure game. Interesting. Yeah, it seems like it's kind of a beat-em-up game, would be my guess, mostly. Like this date announcement trailer. It kind of looks a little janky, but it also visually looks very different, so I might be willing to put up with the jank. It's from Team 17, the company that just upset a bunch of people by announcing Worms NFTs. A NFT based on the Worms game series. MLB The Show 22 has a PS5 and Xbox Series gameplay reveal trailer if you want to check that out. Check out Gamatsu. Tormented Souls is coming to PS4 and Xbox One on February 25th and the Switch on April 14th. And I don't remember what Tormented Souls was going to be. Switch survival horror game. Oh yeah, this is the one where you play as the girl and it's kind of like a Resident Evil 1 parody game. Or I want to call it a clone. Conan Chop Chop launches March 1st. This game was announced a long time ago, based on Conan the Barbarian, but not taking their visuals particularly seriously. What's funny is this could be like a decent Gauntlet clone, or there was another game that came out, and I covered it relatively a short time ago, actually. But I can't even remember the name of the game. Where it's 4 players in kind of a hack and slash beat 'em up game. Okay. Let's do this. The real question to ask certainly would be, does this guy negate effects? Negates the effects of all face-up monsters while they are face-up on the field. So like this one card, Skill Drain. I think ruins my strategy. Here we have a game on Steam called Goo Maneuver, which, yeah, This concept's not a terrible idea as far as having two people stuck by swinging goo, but visually it's implemented horribly. So that's going to be a no. Here we have a game called Armchair Racer, which doesn't look good. So that's going to be a no. Here we have Brick Cracker 3D. It's actually a little shocking that there aren't more 3D attempts at Arkanoid, but even having this tilted visual angle to make it look 3D makes the game worse, not better. But I am surprised more people haven't tried that. $4.99 English only. Here we have Interasta. There might actually be a game here, some kind of survival space game. Of course, as soon as Starfield comes out, if there is any aspect of survival elements to Starfield, or if even one really good space survival game comes out, there's going to be several games on my fall list or wish list that I would have to reevaluate and probably remove. Here we have Bessabarian Nightmares. I don't know how you pronounce that, but visually it doesn't look interesting. Here we have a match 3 puzzle game with an anime girl. Looks like a Chinese game. If I was to guess, yep, Chinese only. Probably doesn't have any adult content in it. Here we have Alien Space Bastards, which just looks like a space shooter of no interest. So no to that. Yeah, we went from winning several times in a row to falling down a rank. Here we have a game called Minecart Madness, which looks awful. Here we have Super Squidlet, which also looks awful. Here we have a Sokoban box pushing game that actually looks possibly too nicely animated for a Sokoban style box pushing game. But I guess I can't really hold that against somebody. Yeah, I think I kind of have to put this on the follow list just because it is so shockingly nicely done, even though it probably is just asset flips. Even bothering to like have a box pushing animation on a character is more work than most low effort asset flippers would do. We have 3D puzzle Modern House, which, how does this work? You grab something, you take it somewhere, and then you put it where it goes. Okay, well, I've seen these ideas before as far as cleaning up a house. It really is just an asset flip, though. I don't think there's a real game around that idea. So, yeah, I have to say no to that. Next, we have something called 20B. Looks like some kind of weird visual novel that seems to barely have any actual dialogue in it. And this trailer is showing something really different, which makes me just have to assume that this is a troll game. Short kinetic visual novel, so there's not actually any gameplay, it's just a linear story. So yeah, that's a no. Here we have survival is land, is how I would read that, not survival island, which would make more sense. And it's obviously an asset flip survival game where for some reason you're playing as a donkey. English and Chinese, $4.99. We have a game called We Are One Prologue. I kind of like this weird art style. But again, I'm not going to play a prologue version of a game. We'll just wait till the real game comes out and put that on the fall list instead. Here we have a game called Letters of Written Adventure. I seriously doubt I'd want to play a game where you have to in any way write a letter or even read a letter. They're calling it a word game, so maybe you just move some words around. That's kind of what it seems like, the way it would boil down to. I'll give this a follow. There might be an audience here that has been underrepresented that might find this game and really like it. Okay. What is this character gonna do? Just look at what they do. The only way this is going to possibly win is if this guy, who seems to be able, okay, we'll play this and see if this decides to negate this ability. If he does, that's going to just destroy this card. Let's go ahead at that point and then chain. Let's see if he can chain again. So maybe I've actually outplayed him. See, and arguably here, nope, did not get outplayed by any means. Let's see, special summon this. And then tribute that. Well, that was a lot. A lot of work to really get not very far. Like, arguably this may be the only game that actually needed to be even talked about today. Here we have Cotton 2 Saturn Tribute, which Cotton is a old magical girl side shooter game that obviously has a fandom, at least in Japan. I could certainly see that. And little fairy girl in the bikini probably catches the eye of a few people. It's definitely an old game, definitely pixely. So I'm gonna put this on the fall list, though. Even though it doesn't support English, I guess I have to take it off. And there I just surrendered because I didn't play, which honestly, fine. It's not like I would have gotten anywhere there. These are basically ROMs. You can see with the silver screen being emulated. It's kind of a shame though that it doesn't support English. I'd hope it would. Next we have a game on Steam here called Ally Study in Realism, which honestly it looks almost exactly like the game where it was an anime girl. It's just now they're using a more realistic 3D lady. Assuming that this character actually moves, this may actually not be that. This may be a static scene that somebody very quickly put together and just asset flipped, and that they're just showing it. When you look at every screenshot, it definitely does seem like this is a static scene. And I don't think it's really even that realistic looking. This is made with the Godot engine. Is this from Godot? There's a new version 4 of the Godot engine that's coming out fairly soon. I don't particularly think the Godot engine is that good though. It's a fine third compared to Unreal or Unity, but I would definitely suggest using Unreal or Unity well before I would suggest using Godot. Yeah, I guess there's just not a game here. Next we have Cotton Boomerang Saturn Tribute, which is obviously just a different Cotton game. Definitely they are charging quite the premium here at $16.19. That is quite the premium. And I wouldn't be surprised if even the Japanese are not willing to pay that much. We have Guardian Force Saturn Tribute, which I assume anything in the Saturn Tribute is a Sega Saturn game being emulated. $16.19 again, Japanese only again. Here we have a game called OS Memories, which does not look like anything of real interest. English only. Next we have a game called All You Are Boat, which looks like a joke troll game. So that's going to be a no. Next we have a game called Requiem, which isn't really inspiring a lot of confidence with these screenshots. Third-person action storybook adventure, early access 1999. I think I can dismiss this. This just seems like it's all over the place. Playing as 5 different adventurers walking into the dream is also too complicated of a story for the level of polish that has. Here we have a Candy Crush clone just called Candy Match 3, which definitely looks like it is straight up just stealing Candy Crush's visuals. $5.99 single player, 1,000 levels. I guess the good news here though is that there's no microtransactions, so if it plays alright, it's very well maybe a better version of Candy Crush than the actual Candy Crush, which is full of cheating and microtransaction, full of cheating in that the game cheats to make you lose to purchase more in-app assistance things. Monsters and weapons here does not look visually polished enough. And then Search All Cats is another one of these black and white find the items games that I have no interest in. Several languages claim to be supported, all in full English or full voice acting. This guy's taking his sweet time. Gametsu has Horizon Forbidden West Shrine Walk PS4 gameplay, which we had already kind of talked about that. Let's see, it's not go full screen. I guess it might be a slight spoiler that at some point you're going to walk by some shrines. But of course with the blur here, I couldn't tell you if that looked good or bad or anything. So I can't even submit a possible opinion with my own blur. I still haven't had a single drop frame, so other people having network trouble or Yu-Gi-Oh! Itself having network trouble is not on my side. I have found out though that my over-the-air DVR Tableau, which I'm not 100% hot on, frankly, it's not really perfect at commercial detection. It's deceptively expensive, and if there's even a slight flicker in power, it tends to lock up way more than it should. It did get a software update recently, but also seemingly didn't add any new features, or arguably may not have even increased stability in any way with that software update. There's still a lot of times where you try to stream a recording and it just spins forever, or it just has trouble with even moderate or minimal network congestion. In all fairness, I think I did get a recertified model version, so maybe if I'd gotten a brand new one, then that would have been less of an issue. But it was already, as I said, expensive. And certainly over-the-air channels are going to vastly differ based on what region you're in, as far as how much content you can get and what that content is. Bring that back. Let's see. Gamatsu says Atelier Sophie, the Alchemist of Mysterious Dream pre-launch preview gameplay and screenshots are now available. Sony AI, Polyphony Digital, and Sony Interactive Entertainment have announced a superhuman AI agent called Gran Turismo Sophie, which they're calling a breakthrough in artificial intelligence, and yet they're using it to race against people playing a racing video game. It definitely sounds like a lot of fluff. It is definitely different fluff compared to Drivatars, I suppose, but only by a small amount. one of the things it's claiming here is that it can race against the top human Gran Turismo drivers, which means then it's going to be just way too difficult, unless you mean it can race against them and will fail miserably, which may also be what they're sneakily trying to say. Like, we don't need artificial intelligence to make NPCs that can beat the best players in the world. You just need NPCs that are good enough to give a challenge to the average player, and that's it. That's as far as you have to go, and you don't need major improvements in artificial intelligence to reach that. Moving on, Dragon Quest X Offline details Dawachaka, which is, I guess, this character. Or maybe it's a land, I don't know. Frankly, it sounds like it's just a collection of nonsense letters. There's a lot of screenshots here, but they're all chibi and low polygons, so I'm not particularly enthralled by any of those images. We already talked about this. Call of Duty and other popular Activision Blizzard titles will continue to be available on PlayStation beyond existing agreements. So they claim. Of course, they could always change their mind after the acquisition was approved. Final Fantasy Pixel Remastered Series Final Fantasy VI launches February 23rd. These are also games that, if I recall correctly, are particularly expensive. $14.39 for a Final Fantasy game, one of the older ones. It's not terrible. I don't know how many people really want to play these games or should play these games, but at a certain level, yes. All of the old games, just owning them for historical sake and paying about $60 for it is as good as it's gonna get. Gamatsu says Zoro the Chronicles launches in June. This is the first I've even heard of a Zoro game being made. I definitely have to question what the story of Zoro is, because I really don't know. I know there was a bunch of Zoro movies, and I know Zoro in general is going to be a kind of scoundrel with a sword. Looking at this, it feels like this is going to be a beat-em-up hack and slash game with some level of story to it. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the game isn't that long. But I could see potentially checking out a game like that. There was that game Karakata that kind of had a similar visual feel to that. Let's see. Yeah, I don't think this is gonna work, but we'll summon this, tribute that, then tribute that using a different interface. Put that face up. Return another one to the hand. Apparently the game America's Army is shutting down after 20 years. This is a GameDeveloper.com article, which I believe this game was actually made by the United States Army. and I doubt it really could ever be proven to have any effect on allowing them to have better recruits or more recruits in the army, which would have been their only real goal. That and maybe some propaganda. The ESRB has debuted a family gaming guide to aid parents in game purchases. The new guide offers nuance for how parents can pick their video games their kids can play. Let's see. See what the website is. Looks like family gaming guide. Selecting appropriate video games. Just kind of explaining the ESRB things. Establishing house rules. Getting permission to play a new game. Managing money spent. So they are still pushing the idea that kids should make in-game purchases, where I think most parents would say kids should never do that, and that's unacceptable. Playing video games online. There's a lot of information here. They're collapsing so you don't get overwhelmed. Providing accurate age information. Arguably, I would say no, you should lie about your age. Always. Maybe not to say you're older, but you shouldn't give the real date and year. Setting time limits. Notice how the ESRB also doesn't really help you in a lot of this stuff. Like they're talking at the beginning about what the ESRB actually does here, and then the rest of this is just saying this is all on you, parents. Setting up child accounts and using parental controls. There's no way for them to actually, the ESRB, to help people do that, because there's multiple different systems and platforms. Seems like a lot of this would just potentially scare away parents. Because if you were a parent that was kind of iffy about letting your kids play games anyways, that big old wall of text probably would scare away a lot of people. The good news is there aren't that many parents that are that restrictive these days. There used to be a lot more. But if you just, from what I hear, the amount of enforcement on video games is probably very low, as parents are much more concerned about enforcing just like washing hands and wearing masks and avoiding getting sick from pandemic or non-pandemic reason, or just getting kids to do their homework or go to bed or just behave in general. Video games is probably much lower on the list of concerns. Moving on, Wildlife has opened a casual game studio called Play A Bit. We'll have to wait until they actually announce a game to see if there's any relevance there. Lost Ark has over 500,000 concurrent players on Steam, and it hasn't even launched yet. Players were able to gain early access by purchasing a Founders Pack. Yeah, I'm not sure if this Lost Ark game will manage to keep people playing after that, but maybe it will. Here's that same story. You'll be playing Elden Ring before the Dark Souls PC servers are fixed. The PUBG owner Crafton wants to sell you NFTs for a metaverse that doesn't exist. And we already talked about Sony's new AI. Let's see, play this. So might as well activate cards since we can. It still gives us points, and that still gives us potentially rewards. This is definitely one of those days though where I don't think I would spend extra time trying to play Yu-Gi-Oh! In fact, this will probably be the last Yu-Gi-Oh! Game we play today. And then game developer is just promoting GDC by saying Supercell returns to dive into the Clash of Clans universe. Right. And then we've got some fall list cleanup here. Game here called Mind Mist that I'll give a little bit more time to. A game called Mind Scanners, which is rated very positively, so I will put that on the wish list. Game that sadly seems to not have any relevancy, so top-down 2D puzzles featuring 2-player local co-op. No relevancy, so it's gotta go. Then Millennium Atoll. Looks like it's a point-and-click adventure game that also just has no reviews and no relevancy, so it's gotta go. This one barely has enough reviews to justify. Put together the puzzle, and then there's a top-down platform game. I feel like this is probably a pretty short game. So basically you're doing the puzzles, and then you get a little cutscene from a top-down perspective. Well, no, it does seem like you can actually move the characters around. They cropped off the bottom of their own video. It's real iffy, but I'll put this on the wish list. Because if I was going to do a jigsaw puzzle game, then I think I would like something a little bit different there. I probably need to spend some extra effort and extra time to make sure I am I'm going to be able to win a little bit more often. So building a deck and crafting a deck with my crafting points, I think, is probably where this needs to go. Also, I have been doing some of the daily quests, so like now all of the solo quests in this point are completely done. So if I get any more daily quests that require me to do solo, all that is left is this. Oh, one thing I did want to say is the mobile phone version of this main screen is a little bit better. Like, it collapses everything down so you can hit it with your thumb down at the bottom here, and it makes it look a little bit nicer instead of just this giant huge waste of space. There's still a pretty big waste of space but it's not as bad in the mobile version. And you don't have to download 8 gigs of visual data for the mobile version. It's like 1.5 gigs, I think, of card images. Much more reasonable. Although I will say their servers really suck. It took like 40 minutes to download 1.5 gigs when that would have really taken only a few seconds if their servers were good. Mighty Switch Force Academy here is relevant enough to be added to the wish list. Mighty Goose. Run and gun shooter. I have been noticing there is this case where the more recent reviews are starting to get like lower and lower because there's just so few reviews, and people willing to make a review of a game that is this old yeah. So I guess the question is, do I follow the overall reviews or the most recent reviews? I think I have to stick with the overall and put this on the wish list. Most recent could inform me if they had changed the game, but most of the time these games haven't been changed. This game might is right. I think I'm gonna say no to, though. It's just not visually polished enough for what looks like a just kind of generic top-down placement strategy game. So we'll get rid of that. Midnight Scenes the Nanny as a horror game. Has enough reviews to be put on the wish list. Midnight Protocol is a keyboard only controls game. I'm not sure I really want to play a keyboard only controls game. It's like a hacking simulation game. Yeah, I'll give it a chance. Put it on the wish list. Then Midnight is Lost. I think we can remove this from the follow list. I don't think there's enough there. Alright. And so that means I need to see if I can run my macro again. We'll just show it off running again. That means it will open up another 10 follow list thing to clean up, and it will go through gamedeveloper.com and what's on steam.com, and then Gamatsu, and then Video Games Chronicles to see if there's been any new news in the past 2 hours and 38 minutes worth talking about. That way we can feel fairly certain that we've covered all the news, since there was potentially a what was it going to be, a Nintendo press conference. Yeah, and it doesn't seem like there really is any new news. Same old, same old. Wolf Among Us 2 gets its first trailer and a 2023 release date. So, with a PlayStation tag. Good seep. It's a lot of darkness, certainly. But I don't know what the twist would really be here. It would be very weird if all of a sudden the visuals did not match the original Wolf Among Us game. And it does seem very much like the visuals are the same out through this blur. So, yeah. Unless they were going to show some new gameplay mechanic. And they're telling you it's coming out in 2023 for basically everything. That would be the thing, certainly, is if they came out and they showed a whole bunch of physics happening in a new modern engine instead of using the Telltale engine. That would be about the most assuring thing you could possibly see. What's kind of crazy here is you have like Telltale, the new Telltale, DC and Warner Brothers, both owned by Warner Brothers, both owned by AT&T, being potentially sold from AT&T at any moment now. Like this, the reason this game is getting announced and shown is probably more to do with just making sure this actually comes out before Warner Brothers potentially gets sold to a new company and everything changes. Moving on, Gamatsu says Atomic Heart is due out between September and December. I'd forgotten Atomic Heart even was not out yet. It's had either its weird like prologue or demo. For a long time. And then here we have a game called Diplomacy is Not an Option, which obviously I'm not going to be interested in. Or VR Patience. There might be something to this that I'll check out later. Put it on the fall list. Although I imagine it's probably not medically accurate enough or medically detailed enough to justify existing, even as a free-to-play game. Usually you see these in there very expensive. Cold Sun. Might be a game here, so I'll put this on the fall list. English only. Tumblefire. Looks like it's just an asset flip game. Early access, $8.99, English only. Bunny Panda looks like nothing. There was an article that I guess it's not really labeled as news, and that's why it's not coming up, where the Platinum Games CEO said you should play Bayonetta 1 and 2 before you play Bayonetta 3, which kind of is obvious. So it's basically not news. There's an interactive fiction tale called Closed Hands that explores tragedy, according to GameDeveloper.com. Right, and then we've got this Miracle Mia. Yeah, I think this is just another case of a game that's not relevant enough. So either I need to make an executive decision and say, yes, I want to play this, even though it has only 15 reviews from 2019. Thematically, it does kind of seem like it's all over the place. You're on this train, you're swinging what kind of looks like a tennis racket. Maybe that's something else. And then you're seeing a lot of like feudal Chinese outfits. Yeah. I think we can say no to that. It may be a hidden gem, but at this point, it's not enough of a hidden gem. And then Myra and the Mysteries of Alchemy doesn't look like it's well received. Maybe because it's possibly censored. Definitely looks like one of those games that would potentially have some lewdness in it. Minute of Islands is a point and click adventure, it looks like. It has very positive ratings, so put that on the wish list. Minimal Move. I think we can say no to that. And at this point, I just don't feel like I can justify giving some of these games more time just because of the pandemic. That they're gonna just be games lost to history. Minimal Crypt. I'll give this one more time since it came out in September of 2021. Mini Golf VR though, it's gotta go. Which is kind of a shame because it looks somewhat decent for a VR mini golf game, but it is also still early access from 2019. Mini Motorways. It's overwhelmingly positive, so yeah, I wonder what it would really look like if I was to just buy everything that was overwhelmingly positive on my wish list. This Mini Motor Racing X looks like it's well received enough to be on the wish list, although in this case I'm not sure I'd ever actually buy that kind of game. Mini Madness, I guess maybe we'll give some more time, although at this point the Hot Wheels game should just be purchased instead. They never really came out with any new announcement or microtransaction thing with the Hot Wheels game, so unless that's going to happen in the next couple of months, or it probably isn't going to happen at all, there isn't a ton of enthusiasm, I would say, for the Hot Wheels games still. Mini Island Spring we can definitely remove because this content creator makes multiple versions of this game and just tries to sell it over and over again, and it's deceptive. Castle Crashers was the game I was thinking of earlier. Yeah. And then Mini Car Racing Split Screen Tournament. I guess again I'll just put that on the wish list. Right. And 68 new tweets have happened on my main Twitter feed. Let me just go through all of them and see if any of them have anything to do with video games. The Uncharted movie director Ruben Fleischer is apparently in talks with PlayStation to adapt Jak and Daxter for either TV and film. Talks basically mean nothing. I will applaud G4. They have started to, with a review of Sifu, X-Play has started to actually cover new games now that new games are coming out. But then they also reviewed Kingdom Hearts 3 for the Switch and gave it a 1 out of 5, which I think will probably anger more fans than anything. Although at this point I shouldn't really be bothering to report anything about G4. It's not relevant. I'm looking at a thing here. This doesn't have anything to do with video games, but apparently Greg Smallwood is an animator for Marvel, and I guess we can just show it. He animated a little Asian girl, and the eyes were black and thin in that animation style, and seemingly nothing else was changed, but Marvel went and changed his art, and that's certainly a way to piss off an artist too, is you don't change their art. Maybe you ask them to change their art, and most of the time they're just going to say no anyways. What's kind of ridiculous when you're talking about comic books is bothering to change someone's art in the first place makes no sense, because you're just wasting your energy and your resources. You should just get it out as fast as possible, because let's be honest, comic books are very low quality product that they have to turn out on a monthly, weekly basis. And apparently some issues were happening in Respawn's game with in-game currency balances. They did put out a Wolf Among Us 4K video, which, yeah, watching the trailer in 4K seems kind of silly. And I'm still just scrolling down my Twitter feed. I'm seeing a lot more having to do with Pizza Day than video games. So the Nintendo Direct either hasn't happened yet, or they haven't said anything of any value yet. Which I just have to assume it hasn't happened yet. Still just scrolling down, and yeah, I think I've hit the point where I'm back to where I was. Yeah, Dying Light 2 is still a thing, and I'm still trying to figure out, trying to filter out hearing Giant Bomb talk about it in a negative light a couple times, for the couple times I've heard about it, and Video Games Chronicle talking about it in a negative light, and try to see what the actual gamers are feeling, which inherently it would be easier to do that if I just didn't listen to the Bombcast, which I shouldn't anyways. It's a waste of time, increasingly more of a waste of time each week, it feels like. And if I just didn't follow Video Games Chronicles, but if I didn't follow Video Games Chronicles, half of the news stories would potentially be slipping through the cracks. Alright, well, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.